Okay, people. So today I am joined by director, writer, actor, producer, right? Craig Thorpe. It's Craig. You've got a few projects coming up. You know what I mean? You've got your studio. There's a lot of things going on in your life, man. So, yeah, looking forward to getting into this. How are you doing today, man?
Yes, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, it's been a bit of a busy last few months. Well, last couple of years actually, really, with everything that's been going on. But yeah, it's good to finally be able to sit down and actually see how far the project has been coming along and where it's potentially going to be going.
Right. So yeah, your current film, right? The one that's, you're in post with and everything like that. Trying not to kill each other. That's the latest joint, right?
It is, yeah. That's the one that's basically sort of taken over my life for like the last 2 years.
And am I right in saying this will be your feature directorial debut?
Yeah, so it's my debut feature. I've done a few short films in the past. Probably about 5 or 6 short films. Yeah, and so I just wanted to take the challenge of making my first feature film. I kind of knew when I was sort of taking on the responsibility of doing it that I might have had to take on the producing roles myself, and that's ultimately what ended up happening. But it's been a massive learning curve in, say, producing a feature film, especially one that has to be like been self-financed as well. Yeah, it's been a bit of a journey over the last 2 years with trying to get it sorted and get all the resources put together and say trying to find bits of financing for it as well.
So why was this the time, right? Because I think 2018 is kind of like when the first short dropped, right? So
Yeah.
why was this the right script and this the right time? Did you feel to kind of step into the feature scene?
So when I first started writing, I started writing feature films. I didn't start writing shorts. But obviously at the time first starting out, people kind of like say best way to get representations to get credits. How do we get credits? You need to get things made, but they never really kind of tell you what it is that needs to get made and how things to say like use credits, and you sort of feel like IMDb credits are the credits that you need. So when I first started doing it, say I'd written a few feature films, I then started making short films, and it just kind of got to the point where I was making short films. The last short film I made was a short called Sobriety, which we started just before lockdown. It took a long time to get made because of lockdown restrictions and the fact that we did like bits of crowdfunding to get the film finished. And with the amount of time it took to get that film made, I kind of realized during that process that the film Sobriety was actually a feature film that I'd condensed into a short film. And then I looked at how long it took to get made. I started like doing like a couple of shorter projects in between them, which still haven't been finished. And I thought, let's just go out, get a feature film done. Let's see what we can do with it. And I looked through the feature film scripts that I had more or less not really ready to go, because like a script is never really kind of finished until you've actually finished the film. But Trying Not to Kill Each Other was the film that logistically was the simpler one to get made. It was mainly 2 actors in one location. All the supporting actors and the supporting locations only featured once. So in terms of organizing the logistics of the shoot, it was the one that kind of like made the most sense to get done, because once we'd got one character in, one location done, that was it. Didn't have to address it again. So organizing the shoot was a lot simpler.
Okay. And going back to look at that script, right? So at this new point where you've made more things, you've done more stuff, right? What did that script, how was it for you? Like, did you look and go, oh, I need to make a lot of changes, or no, this is roughly it? You know what I mean? How did you feel about like the writing from there then to where you are right now?
So the initial idea I ended up changing over the course of, say, rewrites and different projects, and it did develop a lot from the initial idea. Because I do like a lot of script reading as well, I've got some connections in the script reading sort of community. So we were doing like a lot of script sharing, and when the feedback that was coming back was more or less overwhelmingly positive, it was a case of, okay, this script is more or less ready to go. I will sit down, do a table read with the actors that we're going to get on board, and so we'll discuss characters and dialogue and what we sort of feel like the minor changes that need to get done. So yeah, that was kind of like the way that I was always going to do it. So say, write the script, get some feedback, get the actors on board, do a table read, see what their opinions and their ideas are on, let's say, the characters and the dialogue, and how we can sort of like make the changes before we go to shoot, and then see if we can rehearse those changes, we can rehearse the scenes, and yeah.
Okay. Now, how do you deal with feedback? Right? Like, there's sending things out for feedback, getting feedback on things. It's not a bad idea. But there are times when, like, people might have differing opinion, but it doesn't mean the original opinion is wrong, right? It doesn't mean the original text is bad. It's just, I might have said it differently. You're like, oh, I mean, like, Craig, you know what I mean? That first scene, I think it should go like this. But that doesn't mean how you've done it is bad. So when you get like feedback, how do you kind of measure whether, okay, I'll make that change, or I can see where they're going, but I'm going to keep it how it is?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting one, especially with feedback, because when I first started getting feedback on scripts, I felt like I needed to do all the feedback that I was given, because I don't know anything and these people know more than me. Why would I not listen to them? But then the more I sort of like on different scripts, and the more feedback that I've received on different projects, the more I've kind of realized not every piece of feedback needs to be listened to. And you as the writer, you will have an idea, or like even like as the director, or you say you'll have your own idea as to how you want to do something, and how, you know, you've got an idea as to how you want the project to end up going. So again, you need to have like that balance with the feedback, and you need to sort of know, is the feedback that I'm going to be listening to going to make the project better, or is it going to make it worse? I remember there's been times when I've received feedback and it is bad feedback, but then there's been times when I've received feedback and it is interesting feedback, or like it's constructive feedback. One of the actors in Try Not to Kill Each Other had issues with a couple of lines of dialogue, and he said it's in keeping with the character, it makes sense from the character's perspective, but in terms of saying it out loud, it doesn't quite hit that point. And I said, yes, the more I've like listened to that that line of dialogue when I've been watching the table read back, and when I've been doing it in rehearsal sessions, I'm beginning to agree with you. That line of dialogue, or those lines of dialogue, they don't make sense, or like they're not quite as good as what you kind of like the impact that you want them to have. So you make those changes based on. It was like when we had the test screening for Trying Not to Kill Each Other. Some of the feedback on that was good feedback, and it was something to take into consideration when we went back into the edits. But then there were other bits of feedback which again was bad feedback, because we couldn't do anything with it because we'd already shot the scenes. Or just basically said, oh, I found the film funny. Well, yeah. But what did you find funny? Like where does the comedy come in? Where is the comedy most effective? Where is the comedy least effective?
Yes, I mean, that's always a big thing, right? It's just like you need to pick the right people to give critique, because just going, it's funny, it's not really that helpful, right? Or I didn't think it was funny, but why didn't you think it was funny? Like, what you need to elaborate on points, right, to make them helpful and useful. It's not just a case of, you know, I don't like something, so I don't like that, right? Like, I have issues with domestic violence, so I don't like that film. But it's just like, but that doesn't mean it's a bad film.
Yeah.
Right. That just means you have an issue with something and you can't separate yourself from that thing. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a skill in giving feedback.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I know that the film sort of like touches upon some sort of like sensitive subjects, and this was partly the reason why I wanted to do a test screening to sort of like see, do we handle those subjects sensitively, delicately, or do we not do that? And you know, none of the feedback that we received said these subjects aren't handled inappropriately. I mean, that's not to say that someone isn't going to find it inappropriate. It's just the subject, or like the audience that we put it in front of. You know, they sort of like saw what we're trying to do. They saw the characters. They understood the messages and the themes of what we were doing with the film.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. But just going back a little bit to lines, right? There's, as you said, sometimes, you know, you'll write something and you think, yes, this is in line with the character, but it doesn't kind of sound right. Now, sometimes that might be the delivery, right? So do you oftentimes be like, okay, let's just change, you know, the nuance in which you're saying it, or like the tone, the you know what I mean? Just those different aspects to see if the line does work, right? And it's just not the way the actor is, you know, performing it.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to say like dialogue and like say the delivery of lines, I kind of like leave the actors to sort of come up with that, unless there's like a specific way that I kind of want the line to be delivered. I usually leave the actors to do that, because that's sort of like, that's what they deal with like on a daily basis. Like, you know, that's what their job comes from. So they deal with scripts and delivery of lines more frequently than I do. So again, those discussions always are ongoing, even when we're on set. Like we'll hear it get delivered in one take, and then we'll say to the actors, okay, that's not quite worked, let's deliver it a different way. Or you know, the emphasis on a certain word changes the way that the line is delivered or the line is perceived. So there was a take where we said to one of the actors, put a different emphasis, or put an emphasis on a different word every take, or like on a different take that we do, and we'll see in the edit which one is the one that is the most effective.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Because it's like, yeah, sometimes you'll watch things and there'll be a great actor. And sometimes it's like, you know, they'll take a dramatic actor and put them in like a comedy and it doesn't quite work, or vice versa. Right. But then other times it works. But sometimes it's just like, it's the delivery of a certain lines, right? It's the emphasis put on certain things. You know, it's when people play angry, and a lot of times it's just shouty.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that's not always it, right? You can be that quiet anger. You know what I mean? There's just that undercurrent of, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna fuck you up, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but it's not getting those things right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of scenes in this film where that sort of like comes across, and again, in the rehearsal sessions, I spoke with the actors and basically said to them, you know, in this scene, this character is really angry, but you're not rising to that anger, which then makes their anger more prevalent, because you know they're wanting to know why you're not wanting to reach them emotionally. And gradually throughout the scene, the other character gets more and more angry, because the other character is getting angrier at them for not reaching their levels of anger. So you kind of have that balancing act of, you know, we need one character to sort of be really sort of like subdued and somewhat passive aggressive, whilst one of the character is really aggressive, but is delivering it, like I say, it's not just like being loud and being and shouting. It's managed in a way that is in keeping with the character and what the character's wanted to try and get across in that scene, and what the point of that scene is.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. Like, when making anything, do you like to, you know, gather references to things? You know what I mean? So if
Yeah.
you've got a scene and yeah, it's like a fight scene, or like a, you know, a tense conversation with someone, you'd be like, oh, I saw something like that in like the drama. Let me, I'll just capture that. So that's a good reference point. right? Do those kind of things, or maybe in books or other kind of, storytelling media?
Yeah, so influences and inspiration are always like a really important element in terms of like whether it's behind a character, behind a storyline, or behind like the whole thing. I mean, the marketing for this film is we're calling it The Shining but rom-com, and it's this idea of, say, the two characters, the complications of their relationship, but instead of it being like a psychological horror, there are psychological horror undertones throughout the piece, but it's spun more like in a comedic way, and that's in keeping with sort of like the themes of the film, and like sort of like the normalization of toxic and abusive relationships, the way that people sort of like normalize it because of previous generations, and that the topics and the conversations weren't really prevalent about abusive partners, and the way that we've sort of incorporated social media and the 21st century elements into it. It's the different influences of the relationships. So in terms of the influences for it, there were many, and even say going out like the music and the sound design, say going through watching films, even films that you probably wouldn't even expect things to be influences or inspire the film. I say we had films like The Shining, Midsummer, any film that had like a central like relationship at the core of it. Another one of the inspirations was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, because you've got a character who is sort of like very insecure in his relationship, in the way that they sort of like have, and it's the way that they deal with the communication, and the way that they sort of like really struggle to come to terms with the relationship potentially coming to an end, and how they deal with that.
Yeah, that is one of I love that film, man.
Yeah.
Because it's just that, I mean, I love the way it ends, right? Because even though they realize that this thing, they've been doing it so many times, right? There's still that hope that one more roll of the dice might be it.
Yeah.
Right. But then also it's kind of like Memento. When you start watching Memento, you feel so bad, right? You feel so bad for my man. And as the film goes on, you're like, hold, he's a piece of shit. What the fuck? You know what I mean? And I think with Eternal Sunshine, like you think, oh man, like Jim Carrey, he's trying to, just connect with this girl. And but as it goes on, you realize that, yeah, this relationship, there's a lot of insecurities. It's not a great relationship, right? So your kind of opinion changes throughout the film. And
Yeah.
being able to do that, right, bring you in, have you emphasize, and then just kind of your opinion shift. I think there's a real skill in doing that.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the really interesting things that we did when we had the test screens. Like, one of the things I put on like the feedback form was, who were your sympathies with at the start of the film? Did they change at any point throughout the film? And who did your sympathies end up with at the end? And there were a couple of points where the sympathies stayed with the same character, but they admitted that it had changed at some point, and they said like where the points were. I was having a conversation with a friend about Obsession. It's a film that I can't really like rave and rate highly enough. And my mate said to me, like, did you think the main character was the villain of the film? And I said, it's that classic confusion between villain and anti-hero, because, again, you're introduced to this, not as like a sob story, but you feel sorry for the character and you want the character to do really well, but then you see how he goes about wanting that relationship, and about getting that relationship, and then what he does when he gets that relationship. You then start to question, well, hang on a second, I felt sorry for this guy to begin with, and like now, I say he is a piece of shit, and he is not really sort of like treating this relationship really well. It is interesting, and one of the main pieces of feedback that I got on an initial draft of my script was, both of these characters are really unlikable. Like, you have to do something to get the audience on board with the characters. And I sat down and thought about it. I was like, okay, well, what is it that I'm actually trying to achieve with this? And I say that idea of making one of your characters not necessarily have sympathy for them, but you kind of feel sorry for them, and so you're rooting for them. So you see how they're introduced into the story, into the script, and you you start to feel a little bit sorry for them. But then, say throughout the film, you then kind of realize, okay, there's a reason why he's been like this. There's an element of manipulation there with like the audience and the way that they're understanding and relating to the characters.
Okay. Like, just hitting on obsession for a second, though, right? I mean, the main character is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's definitely like, I thought Obsession was done very well.
Yeah.
But I don't think the oh my days, what is it? It's the I don't think like the idea of the film works, because you're told he's a hopeless romantic. It doesn't play out like he's a hopeless romantic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the wish isn't the wish from a hopeless romantic, right? If they just said he's a guy desperate for a relationship, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
But a hopeless romantic isn't going, I wish Emma is obsessed with me and only me. Like, that's not what a hopeless romantic would be saying, right? That'd be like, it'd be more akin to, I wish me and Emma are happy forever and ever. Yeah. Right? It'd be more something along the lines of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's the elements of like desperation, and so that idea of like he is desperate to want to have a relationship.
Yes.
And you know, he ends up not making the right choices with that. Yeah, it is quite interesting how, like I say again, it's how he's introduced into the script and how he's introduced into the film, and so you feel sorry for him. Like, he's building up the courage to say, wanting to ask her out, and then he's getting all sorts of feedback on that, and it's like, yeah, that's not the way to do it. This is the way that you should do it. And then you find out, say, like, his cat's died. You know, he's really upset about this. He's not going to be he doesn't want to spend any time with anyone. She's inviting him out, and he's like very conflicted about what to do with it. And then you sort of like, it's this idea, let's say she's potentially going to be moving away, and he just sort of like does it again in the wrong context. I do believe he is a hopeless romantic, but he goes about it in the wrong way.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, he definitely goes about it in the wrong way, but I think what I think it is, right? And it is that thing with love, right? When you're younger, your perception of love and relationship is completely different to what it becomes as you grow older. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, you might meet someone when you're like 15 and you think, oh my God, I'm in love with that person. I'm meant to be with that. You're not. You're just infatuated. But you have no reference point, right? So it's just like you perceive it to be the thing that you've seen in films and in songs and just all of this stuff, but it's not, right? It's like when you know what I mean, like Justin Bieber, you know what I mean, people like that, when they first come on the scene, like they're like 12 and they're singing songs about, you know, being hopelessly. I'm just like, what the fuck do you know about being hopelessly in love, motherfucker? You don't know shit, right? But there's these songs about all of this thing, and it's just this weird idea that gets put out there that love is this one thing.
Yeah.
Right? This is how love is. This is how it develops. This is how it grows. This is what it will look like, right? And I think when you're young, you buy into that shit.
Yeah.
And that's what I think this is, right? So he might even think he's hopeless romantic, but it's clear he's not a hopeless romantic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Again, it's like a similar thing to Ricky in Trying Not to Kill Each Other. There's all these influences that he's grown up with, and it's this idea of what love and relationships are going to be like, and then you get the reality of sort of like seeing what, like, see your parents and like older people are like. And then you end up, say, struggling to sort of understand why it's like that. And then he doesn't quite know how to balance or like manage his own relationship. And then so he gets to the end of the film and he's really questioning so like everything, because like I said, there's influences are saying one thing, people around him are saying something else. He's seeing experiences from like older people. He doesn't really quite know what to do with all of this, and he doesn't know how to sort of get the best possible version of the relationship out of him and say his girlfriend Ruby. It's a very complex thing to deal with. And say you never sort of like given the correct information or the correct tools to do that. You've got to kind of work it out for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those weird things, right? When you think about school and how long we're in school, they don't necessarily really prepare you for the world.
No.
You know what I mean? They don't teach you how to manage finances. They don't teach you how to communicate with each other, right? And communicate then bleeds into friendships, relationships, love, just all of this stuff, right? And you just think, surely that should be the foundation of school, right? Communication, because then that helps with so many things, because the amount of times we get to things, right? There's this like the Just Say No campaign and anti-bullying and all of these different things, which basically boil down to communication, right? So it's like running a campaign when people are like, say, 16, certain shit has started to become ingrained into them. But if from the minute you go to school, it's like talking about, that was like the thing about those old school cartoons like Transformers and He-Man, and there'd be those corny moral messages at the end. Like watching them now, you'd be like, oh my God, that's so ham-fisted. But as a little kid watching it, you're like, oh, so Optimus Prime, he still wants to be friends with Megatron. Okay, that's something to take, right? And as a little kid, you're kind of like open to the idea, right? The notion of. So it's kind of like, why aren't we doing that at school, right? Why aren't we building that skill for people?
It is weird because, like I say, you kind of, like I say, get those messages, but again, when you're obviously the demographic audience, it is like children, so when they watch it, they're going to be more sort of like receptive to it. But say, as you get older and you watch them back, you kind of realize it was very sort of not necessarily political, but like I say, it was like a ham-fisted way of sort of like getting that message across. And like I say, when you're a kid, you don't have those reference points. You're not aware that's what is actually going on. You're just obviously presented at face value. Yes, you can still be friends with people who have different opinions to you, also like do things differently to you, and you know, also like you how you respect other people, other beings, say nature or anything, like whatever child's program it is. And they don't seem to sort of like do that now. And there were always sort of like, you know, say public service announcements about information, not even necessarily say just about communication or friendship, just about anything in terms of like walks of life. And they don't seem to exist now. And we don't seem to have those elements of communication and understanding and how to express ourselves. And that in turn is like a problem in the way that we sort of like communicate and interpret relationships. I remember reading something years ago and it said like you kind of realized you were only friends with people at school because you saw them 5 days a week. And, you know, there are still, like, say, a couple of people who I'm friends with who I knew at school, and, you know, but like in terms of the amount of people like who you were friends with, you never stay in contact with them. And it's really weird how that kind of happens, because you'd think you'd spent 5 years with someone, you'd have some kind of common ground with them, that you would be able to like keep the communication going or keep the contact going. Even when you try to like reconnect with people you've not seen for years, it doesn't last very long sometimes because you haven't got those connection points anymore. And it's really quite strange how it works.
Yeah, well, like there's social cachet, right? So sometimes it's being friends with people because they're the cool group, or they have access to this thing, or you know what I mean? There's things like that, right? Maybe they're your parents, they're kids of your parents' friends, right? So you walk to school with them and blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of like you're forced into a situation where you're around these people. So it's kind of like, might as well hang out, right? They like football, I like football, right? They like doing puzzles, I like doing puzzles, right? It's that kind of thing. But then I think as you get older, and once you move away from an area, right, you're not on top of people, then you kind of you start to think about the things which are important to you, how you want to spend your time. So then if I call you up and be like, Craig, do you want to hang out? And you're like, oh, I'm want to play Minecraft. I'm like, yo, why the fuck does Craig always want to play Minecraft, man? Like, what's up with it? And so if we were living next door to each other and seeing each other every day, it'd be more, okay, yeah, I'll come over and we'll do that. But when there's that separation, it's kind of like, I don't really want to do that, right? And you change your opinions. You see the people that move out of the area and the people that stay in the area. It's the aspirations. There's so many things that start to pull on you.
Yeah.
So then, like, going back to the people that you used to hang with, it becomes a real interesting situation as you see how they've navigated their life. And some people, right, there's not necessarily the goals, right? They're miserable, right? The way they talk about relationships, you're like, oh, got to get back to the fucking wife and kids.
Yeah.
Oh God. And you're just like, oh, that's not great, right? And it's just like, where's the drive to want to do different things and, you know what I mean, expand? And it's not always there.
Yeah, because it's like that. I mean, I've got a few friends who like moved down to London for like film related things, and you know, we still like remain in contact. Like we don't talk like every day, but like we occasionally say meet up and like have conversations. But because I was down for a film festival at the beginning of June, I was said, you know, I'm down in London. Who's around? And I met up with like a couple of people who I'd not seen for a while because I was down in the area and I was able to go and see them. Whereas normally that, say, communication or that contact would have been done online. It's nice that you still have those options, say, to say, well, yeah, I'm coming down, or if you're coming up to Yorkshire or whatever, you know, let's meet up, let's hang out, and you know, just let's say spend like an afternoon and evening with each other. You know, it doesn't have to be sort of like all the time.
Yeah, but I think maybe with that, because you're all working in film, you know what I mean? So you've all got that common goal. There's that connective tissue there. But if they were, say, I don't know, working as engineers or in finance, would it be the same thing? Maybe it would. But you know what I mean? Sometimes there's though you need to have that just core thing to keep you together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's kind of like one of the messages of trying not to kill each other as well. It's this idea of what is keeping this relationship going, and you know, what is it that they kind of like have in common, and why are they together? Like, why are they still together? Why are they going to continue to be together? And it's that sort of idea. Because, like, again, some of the test screening feedback said that they shouldn't be together, and I sort of feel like we judge relationships we see like in film and TV based on real world values as opposed to the values set within the film. And like you were saying about the drama, like in real life you probably would say yes, those two shouldn't be together, but in the context of the film, you know, say giving that relationship another go after everything that's been experienced makes sense, because that's kind of the point of it. It's this idea of you're not the person that you were 10 or 15 years ago. You're not that person. You know, you've changed, and you need to make sure that you can still be given those second chances.
Although, Craig, with the drama, I was just like, Robert Pattinson was a weirdo from jump. You know, like what I didn't understand was no one in the motherfucking coffee shop is just like, excuse me, that guy's been like spying on you, like walking up to your stuff and looking at it. Like, that's just bonk.
There's people minding their own business. It's
because as far as like, he could be waiting for her to leave and then go and kill her, but and you've seen him plotting, but you're just like, oh, it's not happening to me, so I'm minding mine. You know what I mean?
It's interesting as well, though, because like I say, he presents this idea of like he's like such a perfect person, and then again, that's how he's introduced into the story as like someone who's quite clearly insecure and unable to sort of like try and talk to someone without there being like a forced icebreaker. And then, like I say, that mask of his, like say, slips throughout the film, and it's really interesting. Again, he's a really interesting character because let's say how he's introduced and the flaws of that.
Yeah, what I thought was good about that introduction, though, right, was he, needed to look perfect. And then when she asks him, I think it was the first date, maybe it was the second one, they're in the restaurant. She's like, oh, so what do you think of the book? And then he's just like, I didn't read. And she's just like, okay. Right? She doesn't hold it against him.
Yeah.
But then he's holding shit against her later on. And I think that's the interesting thing about them, because it's just like it's that moral ambiguity, right? Because she doesn't do the thing, right? She doesn't do the thing, right? She talks about wanting to do it. And I'm sure so many of us have thought about like, oh, I'm going to get that motherfucker right now. If I cut the brakes of their car, if I do that, and then when they go around that corner, oh, that would be good. But you don't do it, but you think about it, right? But the others actually did the shit. Right, locking the guy in the wardrobe, like they did their things, but just like, oh, it's all good. And I think that's the interesting thing about the film.
I think there's another interesting thing to say about that bit, and it's about that idea of like what is deemed socially acceptable to say and what isn't, and it's the idea of like you could sort of like spin some sort of like comedic or like some sort of like comedy element to like the other stories, but that one you can't do, and it sort of like kills the mood of what they were discussing, like what else they were discussing throughout the point of that. They were all pretty serious topics. You could spin them in a way so like you could laugh it off, whereas that one you can't do. And it's that idea of, again, what is societally acceptable, and like I said, to like bring up as a topic of conversation, I was like make jokes about, and it was really interesting. And in that moment, they're also like pretty horrible people for like the things that they have done, but she's the one who gets like made out to be the bad person, despite the others all doing things equally as horrible because they cause actual harm to people.
Yeah, and her one, you can go, oh, I can see how you get to that point, right? If you're bullied constantly, you can get to that point, right? But their ones are just like, oh yeah, I just thought it'd be a lark. Right? I just thought it'd be funny to do a thing. So it's just that, like, the intent behind the actions. Just all it's like the girl when he's like, oh, have you ever cheated? He's like, I mean, once, ages ago, I'd never do it again. But then the minute, do you wanna? And it was just baggies down. And you're just like, yo, like there's not even a deliberation there. Right? There's no, hold on, I'm in a relationship. It's just like, fuck it, let's go. You're just like, shit. No, I thought the drama was very well done, but I had no clue what the fuck that film was. You know what I mean? Like, I just, because I'd seen the poster, but I thought the poster was some sort of advertisement for something. You know what I mean? So I didn't realize it was a film, and I hadn't heard anything about the film. And so then I just watched it, and I was like, oh, yeah. But I do like going into a film like that, right? With no you know, prejudgment or anything like that. No influence on how I might interpret the film.
Yes, I mean that's sometimes like the best ways to do it, because you can get a lot of people say like giving contradictory reviews, like you were saying earlier, like it just doesn't, that topic doesn't sort of like resonate with someone because they can't sort of like separate things from it, and it can sort of like interpret the way, or like influence the way that you interpret the film. Sometimes they say it's good to like see a trailer or a post or whatever, read about it and think, oh, okay, fair enough, I fancy going to see that. It was like Obsession. I fancied going to see it because like it looked good from the trailers, and it was like on a similar vibe to Try Not to Kill Each Other. And I thought, okay, it'd be interesting to sort of like see what that's like. And sometimes that's the best way to do it. You see, just like, yeah, I want to go see that, and away you go.
Though I do feel that so many trailers give way too much away. You know what I mean? It's just like, as I said, I see that, you watched Get Out, but did you watch Us?
Yes.
Man, Us was good. Us was good and creepy as shit. Again, I had no clue what it was going in.
Yeah.
But then when I'm like putting together the webpage for the episode of the pod, right? So I'm getting the trailers and all of this. And so I clicked on the trailer and it just played, right? As I'm writing copy. And I see the trailer. I'm just like, oh, that's not, because, the whole mirror and all of that, right? The others, and that's the kind of twist. Like you don't see that coming from at the start of the film.
No.
But I thought the trailer led you to the gate of that. You know what I mean? It kind of made you think, oh, there's something with the mirror. There's something with the reflect. Like there's some, and I'm just like, don't do that.
Yeah. So
you know
sometimes
what I mean?
It's good to like plant that sort of like doubt of, let's say you think, oh, this is going to be relevant, or this could be quite. But then there's times, like I say, too much is given away. I've not seen Weapons, but I've heard people say like the trailer for Weapons was essentially everything happened in the first 10, 15 minutes, which as someone who hasn't seen the film, I'm not sure, but that's a good way of doing it, because like I say, you watch a trailer, you just assume it's parts of the whole film, not just what you would see in the first 10, 15 minutes. And then everything after that is something completely different. But I remember someone saying like that's a film that's like really fast paced, like it's constantly moving. You're not sort of like stopping and taking a break from like the action or the characters. Like it's constantly moving. So it's one that I do want to check out. But again, it's a way of like say using your trailers effectively.
Yeah. Oh, Weapons is definitely worth seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really well put together film. I enjoyed the heck out, but I enjoyed Barbarian. So I was a bit
Barbarian was good. But again, that was another trailer that sort of like gave you, I'll say it's kind of like sent you down the wrong path. You're seeing these people meet in this Airbnb, and it's like, oh well, it's double booked, and then you've got someone going down into the basement and seeing Justin Long in the basement, and you're like, oh okay, Bill Skarsgård, someone who's been playing a few creepy characters recently, he's going to be in on this. And that's what the trailer like makes you think. And then when you watch the film and you end up seeing like what ends up happening and how Justin Long gets into the basement, you kind of realize there's all these elements that have been put together. And say again, it's been a very sort of like, it's been a good past couple of years for like independent and like original horror films, because there's so much variety, and a lot of them are being done really well.
Yes. And it's funny because you then see these directors being, grabbed by franchises, and like sometimes franchises that haven't, the first film hit, but then the rest don't necessarily work, or, the first few worked, and then, so they bring in these indie guys to kind of rejuvenate, So I think that's because, oh gosh, I forget the dude's name. But he's brought in to do the next Conjuring film, and he did a great short film about like a vampire.
Okay.
And it's really, really, believe he was French. He's been on the like we had a conversation. My memory is just so fucking shit though. But that like they brought him through the country, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then you see Zach Krieger being brought in for Resident Evil. You know what I mean? I think they want the Obsession dude to do something, and it's just like, okay, right? Like, as we saw it with Spider-Man, right? The guy that did the Andrew Garfield ones, he came from an indie film that was well received, and then they brought him in to do Spider-Man. So it's just like, I think the indie scene is so ripe, right? With so many interesting things come from it that all the big studios, right, they've got their eye on this, right? You think that you're doing things in the shadows, right? No one's really paying attention, you know what I mean? Because it's hard to put together the budget for the film, and it can feel like such a slog. But there are actually eyes on what's going on to some degree.
It's an interesting way of looking at it like that. I mean, I always say it when, I mean, I've been saying it when I've been sharing the crowdfund for the film. It's like, share this as far and wide, because you never know who might see it, and you don't know who is going to pick up on these things. It was like you're saying, like, say where like directors kind of like start from. It was when the Batman came out a couple of years ago. I didn't realize that Matt Reeves directed Cloverfield. It's weird to sort of like, that's a film that's like I loved watching, say, at the time when it came out. Like, it was a really interesting film, but I never knew it was directed by him. And when you like say they went on to do like the Planet of the Apes trilogy, and then he goes to do the Batman, you see that career progression. I think Gareth Edwards was another one he did, so like a
Monster.
And then so I think he got Godzilla, and then Rogue One, and I think he did one like the latest Jurassic Park films or Jurassic World films. It's crazy. Like, so you see the trajectory of these people.
Yeah, it's funny as well, because he actually did. I think it was the Sci-Fi London 48-hour film challenge.
Yeah.
Right before he did Monster, and like I remember when Monster, or is it Monsters?
I think it's Monsters. I'm not sure.
Monsters. Yeah, I think you might be right there. But yeah, I remember when that came out, and they were like, it's done on an Apple, right? Like on iMac, and you're just like, fuck. Now, I think he'd made some mods to it, and you know what I mean, all this. But yeah, to be able to do all of that, and I think one of the big things with that is you're not showing the monsters all the time.
No.
You know what I mean? It's that silent little reveal towards the end. So it's more of dealing with the human characters, right? The way they're dealing with the environment and everything. And it's just, man, just some really fantastic filmmaking.
Yeah, again, it's similar to like, say, like Jaws and things where like you don't see what it is that's technically supposed to be like the villain of the piece, and say that adds to the horror element of it, because you're not quite sure what it is that you're supposed to be scared of. You know something is there, something's going to be happening, but it's that fear of the unknown, it's that suspense. And that is far more effective than just seeing it all the time and knowing when to use it, and so that balance of how to like spread out, the reveals is an art in of itself.
Yeah. I am curious with Jaws, like, because that only happened because the animatronics
stopped working.
Yeah. So it's just like, if that had worked how they were hoping it would work, would we have got a different film? Or in the edit, would they still have been, you know what, it works better if we don't see it all the time?
Yeah.
I mean?
Sometimes you've got to work with what you've got. So I feel like if they'd had more, like they had more shark footage, they probably would have tried to incorporate it in some way.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you just got to work with what you've got, and sometimes that can actually make the film sometimes better.
Definitely. Definitely. Ah. Now, so with this new film, like, where did the idea come from? Where did you kind of, pull that story? Is some, past experience or like things that you've seen?
So the initial idea was it was going to be like a psychological horror drama kind of film about a lad not wanting his relationship to go through the motions, and he was wanting his relationship to be different. He was wanting different things for it. He didn't want to end up like his parents or like her parents. He wanted something different. And it was going to be this idea of like seeing the alternative future, like the alternative versions of his future without realizing that's what you were kind of doing. But because I didn't really have like a proper story for that, it never sort of like materialized in a proper first draft. Like I kept getting to the end being like, well, I don't really quite know what to do. So I went off, worked on a few different things, took the relationship from that film and put it in a different script, and then that developed into something different. And then I thought, well, I can now go back to this one and readdress all the issues in this one. And the current relationship that I'm in started just before lockdown, and we basically spent like the first few months apart, and it was a really weird time because like you couldn't see the person, you couldn't really see people, and how you were able to communicate with them was purely say just by video calls. And it really impacted the way that people interacted with one another. And it was that sort of idea of, this is a major part in how we communicate now, like say doing things say virtually. And years ago, we say could have had like just like phone calls, but it's the fact that we made that time for each other, and it kind of like got me thinking about, okay, well, let's put something like this into a story. And we've got this couple who have spent basically the entirety of their relationship apart. What's going to happen the first time they actually spend time with each other? And they're in a not necessarily like not necessarily like a powder keg, but that sort of idea of something. These two people, they don't really kind of like know each other or what they're like. What's going to happen when you actually do put them together and put them in like an isolated scenario where because that's always like an underrated element of like horror films as well, is like the physical environment the characters find themselves in. And
Yes.
One especially where we talk about technology and how it sort of like impacts how we communicate with each other. When you strip that element away, what then happens to these people? How do they communicate? How can they communicate?
Yeah, I think that's always the interesting thing with relationships, isn't it? Because the amount of times you see people and they've been together for like years, and then they get married, or they move in together, and then it's over, and you're just like, wait, how does that end? Like they've been together for ages. Like what happened? And it's just, I think sometimes it's easy to show people the good things.
Yeah.
It's like social media, right? No one is necessarily going on and being like, yeah, so I applied for 10 jobs today, didn't get any of them. Tried a new recipe, burnt it.
Yeah.
It's been a shitty day. Kind of wondering if there's any point waking up tomorrow. We'll see. Like no one's putting that up there.
Nice.
Right? But
it's very much like a highlight reel, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my God, it's so incredible. So yeah, only had a couple of ingredients in the fridge, but I made this Michelin-starred worth dish. Oh, it's incredible. Everyone said you should be a chef. Oh boy, you know what I mean? I just went and saw like a triple rainbow. Oh, it was so beautiful. Like, I feel I'm the only person that's ever seen a triple rainbow. Oh man, life is so good. Like that's what people are doing. And people see it and go, oh my God, I want to be like that. But it's not real.
No. That's sometimes like is the issue. It's something that's come across in a lot of conversation recently, where people saying the internet used to be the place where you escaped, and now it's kind of like the place where we sort of live. And when you sort of like surround yourself in those sort of influences online, and so you see how relationships are working and you see what other people are doing, it does influence the way that you act and respond to things as a person. And, you know, one thing that I was always used to say think about was in a time when, say, I was at high school and social media wasn't really a thing. You know, if someone was talking about you on the playground at school, you never knew what was being said. You didn't, and you didn't really care. Whereas like now you're aware of what everyone is saying all the time. And it's too much for people to sort of like cope with and deal with.
Yeah. Which is why they should teach communications at school, you know what I mean? But it's that funny thing. And I think it's that thing, right? Where everyone's like, oh, you should have everything in common in a relationship. I don't necessarily agree with that, right? I think your core beliefs, right? I think they're the things that you probably should align on, right? Whether you want kids, like how you view discipline, you know what I mean? Just those kind of things, be aligned on those. Everything else, like one person might like puzzles, the other one likes reality TV. That doesn't really matter.
No.
You know what I mean? Like the type of films, because I think you can go to the cinema with your friends, right? If the person you're in a relationship with doesn't necessarily like the cinema, you can go to the cinema with your friends, right? There's other people you can do that with, right? Like you might not like right? You might like several genres of music. They might like only one, right? You can go to those gigs together.
Yeah.
The other gigs go with your friends, right? It's not so like, oh, she doesn't want to go and see fucking Beyonce with me. Well, we gotta split up. Right? Yeah. This ain't gonna work. Like, go see Beyonce with someone else. You know what I mean? It's just like, I think as long as you're cool with, you know, we both want kids, or, you know, we both believe that, you know, taking E every weekend might not be the best thing, right? Like if you're relying on those things, I think you're good, you know?
They say it's strange because I say people have this sort of perception of what they think a relationship's going to be like, and sometimes you end up losing your own identity in a relationship because you're also, like, say, doing things like your partner wants to do, or they're always doing things like you want to do, and when they're not around, you sort of like struggle to sort of function as a person because you don't quite know. Fine, like we can miss them and we can say, like, yeah, well, I didn't really do much on that Friday night whilst you were out or whatever. I just stayed and didn't do anything. That's absolutely fine. But if they're working away for like a couple of days, maybe like a week, and you're really struggling to decide what to do with yourself, that's when you sort of need to look at yourself and think, well, what is it that I actually do? And, you know, this idea of like codependency, it is a bit strange because you've still got to be your own person whilst in a relationship, and so having that comfortability to say, yeah, I'll go to the cinema on my own, or you can go to a concert with your friends. It's having that comfortability, knowing that doing that isn't going to cause a problem.
Have your, you know what I mean, have the things you enjoy, right? Have your own interests. You can have joint interests. You can, like, even I remember I took an ex to see Harry. I think it might have been the last Harry Potter film on opening night. I had no interest.
Yeah.
But I knew she loved the films. And I'm like, well, we can do that. You know what I mean? But it's not like I then have to, I'm not going to go, oh, let's sit down and watch every one of the films, you know, to get, no. But it's cool. I can take her to see one. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to necessarily love everything. But if you know, oh, that person's really going to enjoy that thing, take them to do that thing with them. But you don't have to do it every week.
No.
Right? But have your separate interests. Have things that motivate and inspire you. So, yeah, when you're not, you can go and do things. They can go and do things. And you don't have to be attached at the hip. It's not, you know, you don't have to be a symbiote to each other.
But then again, it's like those small gestures as well of like, oh, well, I'm not really that bothered about it, but I know it means something to you, so I will do that for you. It's, you know, it's one of those as well where it's a small gesture and, you know, you don't have to do that, but you've decided to do that because you know it means something to them.
Yeah. yeah, relationships are very, well, I should say the way people interpret relationships are very weird.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and because I remember when I was like saying about what this film was about, and I remember explaining it to a couple of people, and I was saying about this idea of like not necessarily like the key to relationships, but it's that idea of like relationships that exist and why they exist and how you can make them successful. And they were sort of like looking at me as if like I had the answer, and I'm like, no, this film was sort of like a case of let's raise more questions than we answer, and you know, again, say walking out of like this, like walking out of the cinema. So I mean, even kind of like any film, you can walk out of and sort of like question your own sort of life and relationships and aspirations, depending on what it is that you've seen. And you know, I remember, I can't remember what the film was, but it was like a Netflix film. And so my girlfriend watched it, and she was saying like there was like a trivia piece about it where they were saying so many people like ended their relationships after watching this film because it just made them question their relationship. And I was like, yeah, that. It's good that these films can have that kind of impact and say people can sort of like look at themselves and reflect on what they've seen and think, well, actually, is what I'm doing the best for me or for us or what's going on?
Yeah. Or are they just making a snap judgment because they saw something and they're like, that's where I want to be? You know what I mean? It's different ways in which you inhabit something.
Yeah. Was it because like the someone who was like worked on pre-production for the film, they read the script and then said to me like, oh, well, I'm actually having relationship issues at the time, and you know, this script's given me a lot to think about. And it was really weird to sort of like think that the script had that kind of impact on someone, because I just thought, well, I've just written like a silly film here about a dysfunctional relationship. Like I wasn't expecting it to sort of like give someone life advice on how to fix their relationship, but in a way that's a good thing because it's getting those points across. So like looking at yourself and seeing the flaws in the characters and being like, okay, yeah, I'm probably needing to work on myself in these areas.
Yeah, no, definitely. Did you watch Is This Thing On?
I didn't watch it. No, I've heard of it, but I've not seen it.
Oh, it's very good. It's very like it's one of the films that really does a great job of capturing stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
But supposedly that was, I think it's John Bishop. I think that's like how his marriage, like that's based on his marriage.
Yeah.
Right. That they were going to split up. He started doing stand-up as a way to kind of vent. And then, you know, they were able to work things out from that, which is, yeah, it's interesting. I think sometimes people, it's not until I think you look at something, like you take a step back, that you can see, oh, maybe I should, you know what I mean, be doing this, or I should consider that, or
definitely. So it's always good when you can sort of like take those moments of reflection and look at things and say take that step back and look at yourself and your situation and think, yeah, something needs to change, or you say you look at things in a different way as well.
Yeah. So did you kind of like when you wrote the script, that wasn't what you were trying to say, right?
It's a weird one because, like I say, as you sort of get older, like, so you get more opinions and more like awareness of things. So when I first started writing that, you know, it's given across like more themes and messages than when I first initially started writing it. But that's just because, like I say, your relationships develop, the people around you, so like change, and you know, I think the first point of it was I just wanted to write some kind of like rom-com psychological horror. With like say points about say like relationships, without making it like too soapboxy, and that was kind of like the issue like in the earlier drafts. Like there was a lot of social commentary, but there wasn't enough story burying it, and that is sometimes like one of the issues that we have now with like storytelling is like the politics and the social commentary very at the front of it, and the rest, and like there's nothing sort of burying it. Whereas some of the best films are the ones that you can laugh along with or say cry along with, and then you go away and think about it, and you're like, oh yeah, well, this bit was what was relevant and this came up, and you know, the social commentary isn't so like at the forefront. It's more not necessarily an afterthought, but say when you think, the more you think about it, the more you're aware of what it is that you've actually kind of watched.
Yeah, it should be something that I think you feel rather you're smashed in the face with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It like sew it into a film. Don't just, you know what I mean? Boom, there it is. It's like there's that Sacha Baron Cohen film, Ladies First, on Netflix. So heavy-handed, it's crazy. Right? It's just like, oh, if we reverse men and women, this is what the world would be.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, women would act the same as men. And I'm just like, I mean, we know that's not true. Like, even when you look at, like, when you're kids, the way girls, like, handle, like, disagreements with their friends is so much different to the way guys handle that. If we, at school, we didn't get on, be like, Craig, after school, 5 o'clock, you and me in the playground. You know what I mean? That's what guys do. Girls are just like, okay, we're not talking to Veronica, so every time she looks over, just turn your head.
Yeah.
That's what girls are kind of crazy on that kind of front. You know what I mean? So it's a different thing. So you can't just go, oh, let's reverse everything, right? And women are just as bad as men on so many things, right? This whole notion that, oh, if women ruled the world would be a better place. I'm like, you know, everyone, regardless of gender, race, whatever, they can all be pieces of shit. You know what I mean? So when making a film and when you're trying to go, oh yeah, all of these people are good and the world would be, and it's just like,
But it's like when people saying like the characters weren't like they weren't likable, and I think, well, people aren't likable. And one of the things in the version of the film that we've picture locked, there were certain things I sort of had to like fight to keep in the edit, because like they raise, say, this question of like double standards and this idea of, you know, you kind of need to see both of these points of argument, or like these points of view, because the argument is, why is it more acceptable for one thing to happen as opposed to another? But again, it's the way that those arguments are presented. And one of the things that I saw like keep saying, again, it's that confusion between villain and anti-hero. And, you know, it's this idea of, you know, are the intentions genuine? It's just the execution that's bad, you know, and it does deal with like a lot of very difficult conversations and topics, which some people do shy away from and some people just don't handle in the best way.
Yeah. And not all arguments make sense. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have to come from a solid foundation.
No, definitely not. No.
Like, do you feel with this, like, where you are now, there is like, can you see your evolution from like that first short that you worked on? Right, when you look back at, say, Captive, you know what I mean, like the changes in how you perceive and, you know, create stories has changed.
Yes, I mean, certain things have changed and some things have unfortunately kind of like stayed the same, but in the things that I sort of like can control, I've made changes. Like I say, it's how you approach the story, how you approach filmmaking, how you approach, say, the production for the shoots. I mean, Captive was initially going to be, there was supposed to be like 3 actors in that one, but one of them dropped out last minute, and that kind of like worked out a bit better for us. We managed to just get like a small location, which was one of the crew members like student uni room. So we basically again just worked with what we could have. So one of the actors brought the camera to set. We did it, or like we recorded with very little dialogue because we didn't have sound equipment. So you kind of like work with your resources, and you know, so Captive was that one, and then again, so the next one, which was the 60-second heartache competition for rain dance. Again, an actor dropped out last minute, so I had to like replan the entire shoot around that, which is why you ended up getting the story that you kind of got. Because I thought, well, hang on a second, I've been let down last minute. Well, not let down, but like someone hasn't turned up last minute after making plans. Let's make a short film about that, and that fits into the heartache theme. So, like I say, thinking on your feet and being adaptable is definitely something that always is going to have to stay with you when you're a filmmaker. But the more you make films and the more experience you get, the more you kind of understand where your gaps in knowledge are and like where you do things wrong. So like when I did the Examiner, I just did a shot list, and then when I sat down in the edits, there were a couple of shots that were missing, so I like reverted back to like the master shot, but it didn't quite work in the edit. So then for the next project, I thought, right, I need to storyboard, so then I can actually see what's going to be captured on the angle in terms of lines of dialogue and action. So then when it gets to the edit, we've got full coverage of things. So then I'm not sat there being like, we've got shots missing. What do we do as filler?
How do you storyboard?
I usually just storyboard linearly. So like I'll be like, okay, I've got a particular idea in mind for like how a shot's going to look, and I will say just work from start to finish on it. But it does vary on the project. So when I did the storyboards for this, I can't remember how many storyboards I ended up actually sort of like drawing and getting through. But again, because I knew we had minimal resources and very little time to do it, I wanted to keep setups to a minimum. I wanted to make sure that we got as much as we could in coverage. And then if there was anything a little bit more complex, like when we have the fight sequence and the chase sequence, that we've got a full day to sort of like work through what angles we're going to do, how we're going to sort of like hide the cuts in the edit and hide certain elements in terms of the camera movements and where the characters are going to sort of like have like the fight and there's going to be like bits of action. It does vary. I'm not the best artist, so like it really kind of like does. Again, there's different ways that you can do it. I know like there's people who sort of like they will storyboard one shot and then like they'll draw like the camera angle, and then like on the next section they'll have the next shot from like the new camera angle. But I just generally sort of do it of, this is how I want this angle to look, this is what's going to be covered in this angle, and then in the next one this is what it's going to look like. And if there's camera movement, I will sort of like split screen it and say, well, this is what it's going to start off looking like, this is what it's going to finish looking like, and again, where is the camera movement going to come in, what dialogues are going to get covered, what action is going to get covered, you know, and so again, what camera movement's going to make sure that we can get all of that in.
Okay, yeah, all of that makes sense, man. That makes sense. And do you think the challenges, right, like those fears and aspirations of creating have changed for you, or are they the same, right, with more knowledge and experience?
So again, like some of them are the same. So like the idea of having, so when I'd done my previous short films, it was literally a case of if it needs to cost a certain amount of money, then we'll just pay it. So like when we did The Dentist's Tale, because it was majority of one character running around outside, I thought, well, to save having to bring an entire crew on board and do like COVID testing and everything, I'll just say film it on my phone. We'll film all these outside bits first, and then when we need to do the interiors, we can do that when lockdown restrictions ease. So we did that. So the only expensive for that one was the hire of the room, the food for the day, and then hiring out a recording studio for the voiceover. And that was like 800 quid. It wasn't as if I had £800 and I was like, okay, well, I'll make a film with this. It was a case of I need to pay that in order to get the film finished. And I wanted the feature to be different. But again, I learned very early on that no one's going to give you X amount of money to make your first feature film. So I was like, okay, I'm probably going to have to do this as the same way as I've done previously. Whereas, okay, well, we'll just get the money in and then we'll cover the cost for that block of filming. So that's something that has kind of like stayed the same. But again, in terms of doing things differently, making sure, like I say, you've got a lot of preparation with your actors done, make sure you've got like the correct sort of like scheduling. That's something that I've had to like learn and make sure that we've got enough preparation for that. And in case we do end up overrunning, have we got enough time in the schedule to do those catch-ups? When we did the second block of filming, I ended up moving one of the scenes that we were supposed to be filming onto a different day because we had an intimacy coordinator coming in and they needed time to prep the actors. And I thought, well, I want to make sure that we get, this is the major part of the day, so I want to make sure that we definitely get this covered. And once we'd finished that, there was about an hour of the day left, and I thought, well, by the time we've set up for the next scene, we're not going to get a chance to shoot anything, so we'll just wrap early today because I know that I've got time in the schedule to put that on a different day.
Yes, I think that's always a really important thing when you're like project management, essentially. But it's factoring your timings, right? Like the deadlines for things and just all of that, and making sure there's buffers there. Because, man, like when you run up against an issue and then you find, fuck, there's nowhere where we can put this, right? You do not want that. So you always want to be able to go, oh, the weather's shifted. No worries, we'll go and do this and this now. And we
I mean, we had so many problems with that. So I went through like the schedule and the storyboard so many times just to make sure that every single scene was definitely on the storyboard and was on the schedule, and we're just making sure we were going to get all the coverage. And there was only one day where we could shoot the scene where the actors were checking in to the resort.
Right.
And I remember sort of like looking at the time, because I think we were like on like a football international break then. So I thought, okay, that's fine. There's not going to be anyone in watching any football. And then I suddenly realized, oh, well, the international break technically does finish that weekend. So I had a look and there was no Premier League match on the Friday night. And I thought, fair enough, not a problem. That's going to be fine. And then I thought, well, I'll have a look and see if there's any Championship football on. And Middlesbrough were playing Ipswich. And I was like, okay, fair enough. That's not a problem. You know, it's not as if anyone's going to be in watching that match. So then we'd finished filming upstairs. We came downstairs to the reception area, and a group of Middlesbrough fans had just checked into the resort. And then they were next to the reception desk watching it on the TV. And I'm just like, this is horrific. Like, this is awful. This is the only day that we can shoot this. So we basically just filmed it. And then I spoke to like the post sound designer and said, you know, explain the situation to him. And he was like, oh, I've got this amazing software that can sort out background noise. And I'm like, well, okay, I'll send you the clips and then you can let me know what you think. And then he sent it through and was like, yeah, I can't do anything with this. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I had a feeling when we were shooting it that we were going to have to ADR the scene, which is what we've done. And because the whole scene's been ADR'd, it doesn't sound out of place. It actually works really well. But
okay, that's good.
Yeah, when we were actually on the resort, we were like looking at like a few other like different buildings on site to be sort of like, can we use your reception area to check in because it's really quiet in here, and they couldn't do it at short notice. So I said, we're just going to have to go with it then. But whilst we were waiting to get confirmation on that, we were shooting other smaller bits outside whilst we had either the daylight or the night time and we had the lights available. So yeah, you move things around as best you can.
Yeah. But I think that's the issue, isn't it? Like nothing ever goes completely smooth.
No,
there's always something that will pop up.
Yeah. I think what was worse about it was like it was already sort of like scheduled to be like a long day as well, but we had sort of like 3 days where they were like really sort of like intense full-on days, and this was like the third and final day of that. So it just kind of felt like once we've got through this day, the shoot on the Saturday was a lot calmer and a lot quieter, and it felt like a really weird day on set because we weren't like not necessarily rushing on, but we weren't like frantic and we weren't sort of like working at like 100 miles an hour. We could sort of like slow down a little bit, and like the scenes themselves weren't intense scenes.
Damn. Whew. But yeah, at least you were able to kind of find a way around it. That's a good thing with that. So do you think getting through this whole shoot, right, it has increased your confidence in storytelling?
Yeah. In terms of storytelling, yes. In terms of actually physical filmmaking, not as much, because again, without there being the money up front and people having to work for like reduced rates of pay, it's one of those again where you sort of feel like, I don't want the next project to be like that. And you kind of would like to know that you can. I mean, I didn't get people on board before I knew I could definitely pay them. That was the one thing that I wasn't going to say, yeah, I could definitely pay this and then not deliver on that. I would always say to them, this is what I'm offering. Is that okay? And more often than not, they'll say, yeah, because they're either just starting out or they're interested to come on board, work with me, work on the project. And yeah, so like in terms of the confidence, like I always feel like the days I'm not on, like when I'm not on films, like in between sets, in between shoots, it's always like really difficult because you kind of get those bits of rustiness with like directing and producing. You kind of like need to remind yourself how to like do call sheets, the production management, get everything together. But when you're actually on set, yeah, you get into that flow of doing it. It's just making sure that you have what you need to get into production, to get on set. And that's sometimes like where the confidence can wane a little bit, because it is tough out there for independent filmmakers. There's not that much support out there. But when you can actually get those projects made, and so you find like-minded people, you find people who are prepared to sort of, like, say, work on the films with you, that's when you sort of like continue fighting to get those projects made and to get those films done. And your confidence can kind of come from that as well, because they're putting that in you and they want that to get made as well.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with indie, right? Because, you know, there's not a big studio behind you. There's not the budget handed out. So everything becomes a bit of a scrap at times, right? But it's just sticking with it, right? It's that perseverance to get that thing done, you know, and that's the strength of it all.
Yeah, so that's the thing. You just got to keep fighting to get those projects done. And so as long as you can find people who are prepared to work on that with you, and you're not getting those arguments about rates of pay and things, then it's one less hassle that you don't need to have. I mean, when I was like looking for the extras for the boardroom scene, The Dentist's Tale, you know, that was unpaid. I covered their lunches, but I kept getting shot down online because I wasn't paying people for it. But then when we entered post-production on Trying Not to Kill Each Other, I had £24 in the bank to cover it. And I went to a networking event at a film festival, and I saw someone who's connected to like funding, or like they're part of like that community of like funding for films. And I thought I'll have a conversation with them, see if anyone's aware of any grants or loans or schemes or anything where we can get like £10,000-15,000 to get this film done. And I explained the situation that we only had £24 left, and they were like, well, yeah, you can do post-production on that. And I'm like, 3 years ago, I was getting shot down online for not paying people for background work. Now you're telling me I can do post-production for 24 quid. Like, it's really confusing, and I don't quite know what to do now, because I can't go online and say I need a VFX artist, a composer, an editor, a sound designer, and a colorist, and have £24 across all 5 of those departments, because you're just not going to get taken seriously.
Yeah, I think that is, I think it's oftentimes the issue with like things like this, because you can, you know, attend talks, right? You can watch things online and people talk about, you know, oh, well, I made my film and you know what? I just tied up those shoelaces and I persevered and I got it done. And you're like, yeah, but how though? Like, how? It's not just as simple as I put my head down and I grinded on. You're like, yeah, but there's more to it, right? And for whatever reason, not everyone wants to talk about all the minutiae, right? Talk about, man, like trying to get the budget was a bitch. I had to go and do this, and I had to try and convince someone this, and I sold this, and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, I'm not the only one that struggled. Like, but people don't want to talk about that.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's just they want to make it seem that, you know, everything they touch is great and it works perfectly, or I don't know what it is, but yeah, people do not want to break down like the full process at times.
yeah. I mean, it's going back to what we were saying about social media and like the highlight reel. Like, there's always like caveats to things, and people kind of like don't want that. So they just want to come across as, oh, I worked hard, I got that film done. Whereas, you know, I mean, say for this film, I ended up sort of like say putting some money aside to like cover pre-production, so like the hiring of like a room for like rehearsal space, a table read, getting things sort of like organized in terms of trying to get materials put together for like funding for. But because like I ended up having to act as producer on this, it restricted me to where I could go for funding. And I was like, okay, well, I'll look at my finances and see what I can afford. And that's when it sort of like came in drips and drabs, and it was difficult to budget because you didn't quite know what you could afford because you didn't have the money, but you knew you were going to get it. And then, you know, you turn around and like say it's very, very low budget because there's not a lot of money coming in. We're currently working with like a couple of other independent artists to come on board and so like partner with us on the film. And again, like they're saying, you know, we're out of pocket a lot of the times when we're doing the work that we're doing because we haven't got that support. And it's good that we're sort of like working together and supporting each other, because as independent creatives, we need to support each other. And, you know, this idea of there being certain levels to independent filmmaking. I mean, I've gone to networking events, spoken to producers, spoken to people, and a lot of the time they're not interested because they already have like a creative team that they work with. And I kind of get that they don't want to break from that because say they're used to who they're working with and they kind of get funding with who they work with. But then it just makes it harder for people trying to get onto that ladder and say try to get the money set for the next project. It's there is a like very horrible middle ground between the people you want to work with and the people that you can work with. And so again, you just got to work with what you've got. And, you know, again, it's making sure that you can work with people who are understanding of that situation, because it's one less headache, it's one less argument, and one less stress factor to an already stressful situation of filmmaking.
Yeah. I think also, where are you in the country can definitely affect right your resources. You know what I mean? The things you have access to, right? If you need right an editor, as ADR, like these different things, depending on where you are, there might not be a load of people doing those things. But if you're in London, right, there's more of a community
doing it.
So you can maybe find someone, right? It's not guaranteed, but you might find someone easier than if you're in Hull, let's say. You know?
Well, we were having this conversation at a networking event. Someone who I met was like down in Sheffield, and they were saying like there are certain like areas around the country where like you're either at the start of your career or at the end of your career. Like you never really kind of meet people in the peaks of their career in like smaller towns and cities. Like if you're trying to make something not like near Manchester or Liverpool or Leeds or London or anywhere, you're going to struggle to find good enough talent to try and do that, because like I say, you're either going to be working with, again, no insult to like students or people who are coming into it. So we had a lot of students work on our film and they were really good, and I'd like to work with them again if the opportunity presented itself. But you tend to get like a lot of people who are say like just starting out or say just finishing, and it, you know, I've spoken to a few people and about this project, and they're saying like, oh, who's the cast attached to it? Are there any major stars? And you kind of feel like not really, no, but like that sometimes is the way that it goes when it comes to like casting and what ends up happening. We did get a couple of bites from major stars to come on board with us, but then it never kind of went anywhere because they had the lack of funding, and you know, it happens.
Yeah. And I will say, right, sometimes stars don't mean shit. You know what I mean? Like that, and you can find those actors that are good in one genre, but not in everything.
No.
Right? There's people that are good on TV, but when they make the transition to film, does not work for whatever reason. You know what I mean? So it's just like going, does the film have stars? It's just like, I don't think that's the question. Like, the question should be, what's the story, man? Like, is the story compelling? Because end of the day, that's the thing that will draw people, right? Because you could have loads of stars in it and the story's trash. No one's going to go watch that film because they're like, there's no story. It's terrible. You know what I mean? But if it's a great story, people will come and they'll go, oh my God, those leads were incredible. Like, I think it was one of their first films. Like, to get them before, and you talk about that, it's, you know what I mean? Then they become stars, right? They become the things that you're like, I want to see what they do next.
Yeah, because like this is something that again we were talking about, the way that the industry has kind of like changed, and like in the 50s and the 60s, the actors were signed to the studio, so you got the same actors starring together in similar kinds of films. So it was a case of, are you going to go see the new Cary Grant film? Or are you going to go see the new Audrey Hepburn film? Because the name was what was attached to the film, as opposed to, we've got this idea for a film, let's see who we're going to bring on board for it. And I know there's like jokes around like some of the, like, there's actors who are kind of like in everything nowadays, but like sometimes they are good in, let's say, good in certain roles, they're really effective in certain roles, and so sometimes they are just brought in because it is a name, stick it on the poster, people will go and see it. Neither's necessarily like a bad way of doing it, but you know, when we were initially going to be putting the film into production 2 years ago, and so I was emailing around, say, trying to get a bit of a press release and a profile for the film, and it was like, are there any major stars attached to it? And I'm like, but it's the same film, irrespective of who stars in it. It's, you get why they're sort of asking that question, but again, you know, we could become stars from this, and that's sort of like what needs to be sort of addressed. That's what needs to be sort of looked at. It's this idea of people, they just kind of want to be there for the end results and not there for the journey. And that is like the most important thing, especially with filmmaking. There is such a journey to have with this. People need to be made more aware of the journey and what is involved in it.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. And understand what you're dealing with, right? If you're dealing with independent films, right, the chances are, no, there's no stars. There's no, or we should say, there's no actors from large franchises in this. Right? Like, you can go, listen, we've got, man, our 2 leads. They are fantastic. You will see them in more things. At the moment, this is just their, you know, their second, first roles. But the performances that we've seen from them, is phenomenal. So that's why you want to get behind this film, right? You have to sell it in a way that talks about, you know, the skills and the talent that you are dealing with. You know what I mean? And how that then helps nurture this story, right? And also be like, listen, we could have had Nick Cage, but I think that would have taken away from the story. Right? We want the story to do this. We want it to breathe in this way. So having people that you might not recognize works better for what we're doing. You know what I mean? Rather than, we didn't have the budget for Nick, so he's not in it.
It's, and say it's strange because like one of the things again that I've been sort of like saying to people when I've been talking about it is a lot of people who are working on this, they're getting their first professional credits either straight out of university, drama school, or just in general because they've got a desire to want to work in film, and they saw the casting call or the crew call and decided to come on board. You know, we're sort of all coming through this together. I find we've got a few people on the film who have got like a vast amount of previous acting experience, or like say DP work and like editing and everything. But for the majority of us, this is all like our first major credit. Let's say we've worked on short films, student films, whatever. But for like a feature film, a major project, or like a big scale project, it's the first time we're all doing this. So we're all, again, say like supporting each other, and we're all going to sort of like work together again in future. And that, again, is what needs to be recognized. It was when when Christopher Nolan got Best Director for Oppenheimer and Cillian Murphy got it. You know, it was really weird to think that the first time that they worked on something was Batman Begins in 2005, like 18 years. And you when you see them both getting those awards, you don't think that's an 18-year partnership. You don't view it like that, but that's the way that it has been. And to see them both get that reward, and see the fact that they're still working together, is testament, say, to taking chances with people and say working on like say not necessarily smaller scale projects. I'm not saying Batman Begins was a small scale project, but you know, at the time, you know, you've got people working together on all sorts of different things, and you never know where that career is going to end up going.
Oh, definitely. And you just think like the budget for that is not what the budget for what, you know, a superhero film is probably getting nowadays.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it was still probably smaller then to what they're dealing with now. Right. And it's, I think it's all about those relationships.
Definitely.
We see like directors, writers, actors, you know, cinematographers. We see these groups go from film to film for film because they built those relationships. There's that trust, you know, okay, if I ask this person to do, that's what they will deliver, right? I know that they will always bring 100% to the table.
Yeah.
And so we see that, and it does get reflected in the end product, you know?
And then you kind of like say, see that relationship grow and develop over the course of say like the future films that they end up working with together. Or similarly, if say someone ends up becoming unavailable, say whether it's the composer or cinematographer, and then they bring someone new in, that's the person that they continue to work with. It's not just a case of, oh, well, I'm just using you because my usual go-to isn't available. I'm working with you, and then now we're working together on everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's great. You know what I mean? I think that's a good thing. But you've got to give people the opportunity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if it's just like, you know, oh, well, Craig hasn't directed a film. Let's wait, Nolan's free, right? Like, give the script to Nolan. He'll direct it. It's a bit like, well, then what about Craig? Like, how do you get the experience of directing a feature if people are like, well, he hasn't done it before, so let's give it to, let's give it to Linklater. Let's give it to, you know, like these people that have done it numerous times. Like, it doesn't.
It is difficult because, like I say, like you said about the opportunities. I don't think there are enough opportunities out there. And you know, whenever you sort of like see courses for like learning about stuff, there's always like restrictive to like how many places are doing it. And I feel like if you make it restrictive, in a way, you're making it exclusive. And in an already overly competitive industry, restricting people access to, say, learning resources just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Or the courses are for like, you know, 16 to 21-year-olds, right? And you're like, oh, that's a great, you see it and you're like, oh, that's an awesome opportunity. Oh, well, obviously I'm too old for that. Okay.
I wish I'd been 16 to 25 at some point in my life. I mean, but in a way, it is good to sort of like get new people, or say like younger people, the support needed for it. But then when I see them saying that they're going to give out like £1,000, £3,000 for like 60-second short films, I just think, why do you need the money to do that? Unless you're after something like specific in terms of say like building a set or paying for a certain type of costume. You know, when like video cameras still, like when they first came out onto phones, the recording capacity was 60 seconds. You didn't need to sort of do anything fancy with it. You had 60 seconds, so you used it. And you know, I do sometimes feel like it is being overcomplicated with the fact of, okay, we'll give you $3,000 to make a 2-minute short film. You know, that's fine. Yeah, you might be able to pay people for it, you might be able to cover expenses, but in terms of actually physically making the film, do you need that money? It's yeah.
Well, I think some of it is right. How do people navigate this thing? Because if you're given a whole heap of money, then most people can make something work. But it's just like, could they make it work with nothing or very little? Right. That's when then you can see, oh, these people want this thing. Right. These people are grinders. These people have what it will take to do the thing, you know?
Yeah, again, when we had the test screening, one of the bits of feedback we got was, in the build, sort of like one of the arguments in the film, it'd be good like if the characters were like throwing dishes, or like there was a bit more like violence in the fight sequence. And I remember reading that thinking, if I'd have had the resources, if we'd have had like the props to have like breakables, we would have done it. If we could have hired like stunt people, we would have done it. If we'd have had the money, we wouldn't have actually hired out a holiday home. We would have built a set, and then we could have had, say, people getting thrown into walls and there actually being like some sort of like damage done to these places because we didn't have the money to do it. We couldn't. I really wanted it to be more sort of intense and more violent, and it just sadly couldn't happen. It's one of those instances where like not having money and not having resources hampered it in terms of creativity. But there are times when, say, having those limited resources forces you to be more creative.
But also, not all arguments devolve to that.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, because that's an easy way of showing something, right? Someone throws plates and blah, blah, blah. But it's just like, that's not every argument.
No.
You know what I mean? So that doesn't have to be like, oh, that's the only way to show this thing, and be like, oh, well, it doesn't work because there's no dishes broken. Or you're like, I mean, that's your interpretation of it.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily what it needs to be.
No, it'd have been nice to have like had something. I mean, we had like plastic glasses like on one of the counters, and I basically said to the sound designer, put the sound of like glass breaking in, because like I said, there's like a few actions, say, like where stuff happens. But in terms of sort of like shots where the actors are like throwing dishes at each other, it probably wouldn't have worked for what the argument was about. But it would have been nice to have done it. Yeah.
Oh man. So where is the film now? Like, when will people possibly get the opportunity to see it?
So we're hoping that the film's going to get signed off no later than October. We've picture locked, and everyone else in post-production is currently working on it. So we've got sound design, color, and music and VFX going in. So hopefully it'll be finished by October, and then it just depends which film festival is the one to select it for its premiere and when that's going to happen. We've got some festivals in mind for ones that we would ideally like to have it at for a film festival, or for a film festival premiere. But again, it's just, sometimes film festivals won't accept it because it doesn't fit a particular style that they're doing, or like what their programming is. So in terms of when it's going to be out to the audience or out for like general public viewing, it just depends what festival it gets selected at, what sort of distribution deal it gets. I am in the process of like discussing distribution deals, because I kind of do want to get it out into cinemas. I don't really want it just to drop onto a streaming site and it disappear into obscurity. But again, it just depends how it goes on festivals in terms of like sales agents, what happens with that. It's something that's new to me. I've never had to deal with this before. So again, it's a big learning experience, and I just need to make sure that we get the right deal for the project. But for the most part, like I say, it'll go out to film festivals, and we will obviously be continually updating with the success of film festivals and when it's going to be getting shown and where it's going to be getting shown. And one of the things that we would like to do as well is have like a bit of a Q&A tour with it as well. So let's say we go around the cinemas and like say we've made this film, we're going to have the Q&A session. Anyone who's interested in film, or anyone who just like say either like lived in the area where we filmed it, or like knows some of the actors, say come down and see if we get some kind of audience and interest that way.
Well, I mean, that has worked for a number of people. Like Kevin Smith has done it with his last few films, right? Instead of just releasing them the traditional way, like he's gone on tour, right, and just done a Q&A every night, and that's worked very well. Like a number of other directors have done similar things with their films, you know. So I think that's not a bad model for indie. And you've got a number of shorts as well, so you could play some shorts, right, to as the intro into, and then get into the film, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And make it like this whole evening, bring in some of the cast, just talk about, yeah, you know what I mean? You play some short films, do an intro, play the feature, Q&A, talk about film process, all of this kind of thing. It becomes even more, right? So it's just like the offer of what the night is larger than, oh, I'll just go to the cinema. It's like, oh, it becomes this whole thing. So you're like, oh man, let's all go to check out Greenwich's new thing. So that could be fun.
Yeah, it's something I'm looking forward to. And like I say, speaking to a few different venues about getting those events arranged. But again, it's just making sure that we can get the film ready, and we're making sure that we can get the audience, or making sure that there's going to be interest. Because like I know for a couple of the venues we have got an audience, but it's for the areas where, again, we're not as well known. You know, it's just making sure that's it. Again, obviously, like the venue will be able to make a judgment as to whether or not they believe it would be a viable option. It's just, yeah, those conversations are still ongoing for it.
But I think if you create the resources, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then start breadcrumbing your socials with those, it builds the interest.
Yeah.
Right. So introduce people to, you know, our couple. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So create some little bits, right? I don't know, there's probably some footage, and you can take some bits and be like, oh, I'm Ruby, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And then you'd be like, oh, who are these people? Like, what's the thing? And you know what I mean? Just like talking about relationships and blah, blah, blah. And so it's just like, what's this film gonna be? Right. And so it then makes people go, that'd be interesting. I'd like to go check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so let's say we've got like material, and we've got, say, conversations currently ongoing with, say, different venues, and we've got bits and pieces put together, say, to like help promote the film, just in general as well. But yeah, it's just one of those where, as the film's all, it gets closer to getting finished, it's making sure that we're prepared for when the film is finished, and we can then get launched with, say, the distribution and the marketing side of promoting the film, and say selling the film to a wider audience, and say seeing if we can generate interest taking it on tour, and then take that to a distributor and say, well, we had X amount of ticket sales at X amount of venues, like there is an interest in this film, so either send it out to cinemas or a more sort of like viable streaming option for where more people are likely to see it. It's all new to me, so it would be a case of like just having to learn and see, not as make it up as you go along, but you know, you kind of just like wing it and see what comes of it.
Yeah. Okay. And then what's next for Greenwich Films?
So because, say, we've been working on this film for like the last couple of years, we've got like a list of like short films that we'd like to work on, so that we've got like a bit quicker turnaround of projects. So we've got a list of short films to work on, and we're in the process of putting materials together for that, finding locations, finding cast and crew. So yeah, it's just to get some extra short films out there, quicker turnaround of materials, and again, just continue to work on the feature, get that sold, and hopefully get some interest and backing for potentially the next feature film.
Do you have a a script that you think could be the next one?
Yeah, so I've got a script and a pitch deck and all sorts of like materials ready for what I would like to be the next one. But I do have just like a back catalogue of scripts and general ideas and first drafts of other ones in case, oh, we don't want to do that particular genre. We'll go for, have you got something that's a little bit different? You know, have you not got a horror film? Have you got like a crime thriller or a sci-fi horror or something? You know, I've got ideas and I've got first drafts, second drafts. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you do corporate work as well at Greenwich, or is it just like narrative work?
It's mainly narrative work that we do. We are trying to get contracts here to do a bit more sort of corporate work, but it's very competitive, and we always seem to like, it never seems to quite get there. I say personally myself, I have done work before with like BAFTA and like other so like regional competitions, say with like script reports and reading and judging for film festivals. But in terms of like actual corporates, like actual like corporations and like adverts and commercials, we've done like little bits, but it's never sort of like amounted to like a proper contract.
Yeah,
we have this coming up. Are you available to do something for it?
Right. Yeah, but sometimes that's another way to kind of, you know, supplement budgets and things such as that, if you can get into that kind of field of things. But it does sound like there's a lot going on, man.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's a lot going on.
Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, and then it kind of like all hits me all at once, and I'm like, okay, yeah, we've actually got a lot. So like, we're currently in the process of rebranding and relaunching like the script database side of things, like in terms of like the script consultancy and the script tips for like new writers. That was something that was supposed to be it's been like an ongoing project since like the start of the year, but it's sort of like one of those that's been sort of like rumbling on in the background, and we've never found quite the right time to get it properly launched because we've had like other things going on. So hopefully towards the back end of this year we can get that relaunched, and new writers out there can access us for resources, whether it's script information, script tips, writing tips, anything.
Yeah, that's always useful, right? To have a resource like that, that's definitely a helpful thing, which is that's good, man. Like, do you like contact, you know, the local universities, schools, colleges, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we go in contact with some of the local universities. When we were doing the shooting, we got some like say students on board to like either help out as crew or say to help out as like background actors. But yeah, and we're still like maintaining those connections and those contacts to basically say, yeah, we've got this coming up. Would you be interested in sort of like promoting it or getting us involved? It's we're still maintaining those connections.
Awesome. Okay. Oh, one quick thing, as I see, like, there's your, you know, base in Leeds, right?
Yeah.
Now, did you found the company in Greenwich?
We did, yeah. So basically, I did a film course down in Greenwich a few years ago, and I met like a lot of other northern creatives down there, and we said that we were going to create like a platform for us to create our own work and share our own work from. And I jokingly referred to Greenwich as Greenwich, and then it sort of just went from there.
So founded in London and then taken up north.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I did wonder, because I'm like, wait, they found it in Greenwich. There's not a Greenwich in Leeds, is there?
No, like... no. No, it was a film course about 8 years ago, so back in 2018. So there were a lot of us from the north, and we were all like, yeah, we need to sort of like work together on things. And then we just said, yeah, let's create a platform, and yeah, that's where Greenwich Films came from.
But I think that's good though, right? Like, because I think more people need to think like that, right? Come together, help, support each other, because you're all trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So why not share that's those skill sets, right? Support each other, because in doing that, you create a platform which you can grow and, you know what I mean, expand from.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's one of the main things. And say we always sort of like want to support as often as we can. So like say some of the students who worked on the film with us, they were then off making their own films for university, and they were launching crowdfunders. We were promoting it, contributing to the crowdfunder, and saying, you know, here's X amount of money. You can. That's like a little bit of support for you to make sure that you've got the resources there to do that. Whether they'd budgeted and said we need X amount, or if they just said, well, we'll just see what we get raised, or just see what we raise and work with what we get. You know, you've got to support each other, and you've got to help each other.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. Definitely. Oh, that's awesome, Craig. It's awesome. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the film once it drops, right? And once it's ready, come back and we can actually we'll really get into things on that side.
Definitely. So that would be good. So we'll say the next thing we'll hopefully get a couple of trailers edited together. We were waiting for like the sound design and the music and the color to all get done to the footage before we did that. So yeah, we'll get a few trailers together. We'll send something else over, and we can take it from there once the film is ready to be seen and discuss the film in more detail.
Nice. Sounds good, man. But how can people, let's see, you know, well, I guess get hold of you, right? If anyone's got big pockets and they want to help you, you know, finish all the things off, like how would they reach out to you?
So we have got a crowdfunder at the moment, which is live, but if it was anything a bit more sort of a larger donation, that wouldn't be sort of like, well, like say through like crowdfunders, then say they can either drop me an email or get in contact with me through Instagram, or say through the website.
Right. And where would people find the crowdfunder?
So the crowdfunder is linked to the Greenwich Films and the TNT KEO Film Instagrams accounts, but it's on greenlit.com. I don't know if there's a feature on Greenlit where you can search for a project, but if there is, it's under Trying Not to Kill Each Other, TNT KEO, just to keep it a little bit briefer.
Yeah.
It's a very lengthy title, so I say we kept abbreviating it, say for like the call sheets, and some of the crew members were like, we don't even know what it stands for, we just know it as TNT KEO.
On that though, because it was meant to be you were originally going to call it the moments, right?
The motions, yeah.
The motions, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, so where did the change come?
It came from like the change of like the style and the tone of the film. Let's say because the motions was going to be more of like a psychological drama, whereas Trying Not to Kill Each Other is a very sort of like offhanded way of like how you sort of like describe spending time with someone, or you'll be trying not to kill each other. And because it's sort of like said in that manner, it's very in keeping with like the idea of say like normalizing that sort of idea of relationships and how you interact with each other. So, and because the film is sort of like a comedy, it's a rom-com with a twist, it just seems to fit a bit better.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, man. That makes sense. Awesome. And so how can people keep track of you and everything you're doing now?
So yeah, so again, just mainly through the Instagram. We're trying to keep as active on Instagram regarding say the post-production of this film as possible. So yeah, Greenwich Films on Instagram. Well, we're Greenwich Films across all social channels, but we're mainly most active on Instagram. But there is going to be some more YouTube content regarding this film going out over the next few months, because we've been documenting as much of this film process as possible to try and give a bit of an insight, but also educate other filmmakers on the process. So we're in the process of editing elements of the behind-the-scenes stuff that we've shot. So then that's going to get released, and you can get access to sort of understanding costume, production, pre-production, what post-production's been like at the moment. So yeah.
Oh, tremendous. Fantastic. Okay, so people all the links, you know, the crowdfunder, the website, the socials will be on the webpage for this episode. So go support, go follow Craig and the crew. And yeah, we look forward to when everything is ready and, you know, the film gets that premiere.
Hopefully so. Yeah, that will be good. And so we'll keep you updated when that premiere is going to be happening.
Tremendous, man. Well, thank you so much for your time, Craig. Really appreciate it. Been a great chat. So yeah, thank you, man.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about it and other things, all things related to film.
No worries at all, man. No worries at all. And yes, I look forward to doing it again when you know, we're at that next stage of
Definitely.
things.
I will be back in touch.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.